Hello Year 9, so I wanted to give you just a little bit of speedy feedback, and this time it's on embedding quotations. So what I mean by embedding a quotation is when you include quotations in your writing, but you include it in a way that it fits in with the sentence that you're writing. So you could take the quotation marks out and the sentence would still make sense because you found a way to include that quotation in a way that makes sense with the rest of your writing. And this is quite a tricky skill to master, but it's really, really useful and it's really important because it means that your writing kind of flows and the quotation doesn't distract from the overall point that you're writing. Sometimes when your quotations aren't embedded, your writing can get confusing because the sentence doesn't read very well if the quotation hasn't been embedded properly. So I'm going to try and help you to get better at embedding quotations through this speedy feedback today. The reason for this is that I've noticed across a few different students' answers that they're using really good quotations, they're using effective quotations that are relevant and they're analysing them, but they're not embedding them and it's making their writing a little bit confusing to read. So this example that I've got up now is actually of a student's work that's really successful in embedding quotations. So this student has found a way to add those quotations in without distracting from their argument and in a way that it's really seamless, it just flows with the sentence. So I'm going to read out what they've got. So she feels that London is quite an unclean and unattractive place to which she hasn't adapted to like she was Guyana. She saw Lord Nelson too high, which suggests she finds the statue quite intimidating, which may lead her to find the people pouring from the underground quite intimidating and cramped, unlike Guyana's hummingbird splendour, which suggests Guyana is quite a peaceful country. So what's so good about this is that the quotations here, they make sense within the sentence. So even if I took the quotation marks out, like this, these sentences would still make sense on their own. So unlike Guyana's hummingbird splendour, that makes sense as a sentence on its own, even though it's a quote that's been directly taken from the text itself. So this is a really, really good example of how embedding quotations just makes your answer flow, and you can see how she's used multiple quotations in one sentence, just flowing throughout her answer and just adding that evidence in a really neat kind of way, which is really, really good. Now, I've got another example of some student work, which is also really good, again, for the same reason that they've chosen really good quotations that are really relevant to the question that they were being asked, and they've definitely analysed the poem and have some really good points. However, the difference is that these quotations haven't been embedded, so they've been included in the sentence, but they don't make sense. If I were to take the quotation marks out, they wouldn't make sense because these quotations haven't been embedded quite correctly. So this was a question about the night mail, and it was asking students to explain how the night mail is presented as important and valuable. And this student has written, Auden presents the night mail as important because they talk about how excited people would be if a letter was supposed to be given to them, and people would always be happy to receive them, letters of joy. Also, people would love to tell other people what their letters would be about, gossip, gossip from all nations. So you can see that if I remove the quotation marks, you can't tell that they're quotes anymore. These sentences just don't make sense on their own. So people would always be happy to receive them, letters of joy. Tell other people what their letters would be about, gossip, gossip from all nations. So I know that they're quotations, but they still need to make sense in that sentence, and it needs to be grammatically correct even if you took those quotation marks out. So what we need to do is we kind of need to rewrite some of these sentences with the quotes in a way that the quotations fit nicely into the sentence. So for example, what I might do is say, people would be happy to receive letters of joy. Now, this makes sense as a sentence on its own. People would be happy to receive letters of joy. If I took the quotation marks out, people would be happy to receive letters of joy. That makes sense, okay? And then you could go on to analyse that a bit further. You could go on to say, the word joy suggests that people are receiving happy news or messages through the letters, which suggests that people value the night train for bringing them good news, for example. So that might be how you'd extend that point a little bit more. But you can see that how that's embedded now in the sentence. People will be happy to receive letters of joy. Okay, for the second one, people would always love to tell other people what their letters would be about. Gossip, gossip from all nations. So clearly the student has identified that this is about how excited people would be to share their gossip and tell other people what's happening in their lives. But with this quote not being embedded quite right, it's just a little bit confusing to read. So how I might change that is I might say, also, people would love to share their gossip from all the nations, as they were able to tell their friends and loved ones all the exciting things happening in their lives. So now this makes sense in a sentence. People would love to share their gossip from all the nations, as they were able to tell their friends and loved ones all the exciting things happening in their lives. So I hope that this speedy feedback has just given you a little bit more of an idea about what I mean when I'm talking about embedding quotations. And you can also see how that answer now just reads a lot better, and you can kind of understand more what they're trying to say about the quotations as well. And using that structure is going to really help you to improve your answers. So what I'd advise you to do is definitely keep this in mind for future tasks, but it would also be great if you could practice by going back to some work that you've already done, or have a go at writing some more little mini paragraphs and just practice really embedding those quotes into a sentence so that they make sense. Okay, so thanks for watching my speedy feedback, and I'm really looking forward to seeing your embedded quotations in future lessons.